Who are the teams to watch, the players that you got to keep track of for this prospect list as we get into this week's matchups? What's going on at Michigan? Who is their quarterback? We're going to talk about that as well today on Locked On NFL Draft.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of the Locked On NFL Draft Show. I am your host, former NFL and AFL defensive back, Eric Crocker. And of course, as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Ryan Tracy from Locked On Chiefs and Rogue Analytics. He is at Ryan Tracy NFL on Twitter. That's where you can find him. And you can find me at Eric_Crocker on Twitter. We want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day and get into some more matchups and things that we're talking about as it pertains to college football. And as we're recording this, we are a couple of hours away from the NFL season kicking off. So just exciting times all the way around for football. This is, I don't know, I don't want to speak for Ryan, but definitely my favorite part of the season, where it's just football. And at some point, it almost gets to be football every single day. So exciting times. And we're excited to talk about some of these prospects, and first and foremost, we want to dive into some of these Notre Dame guys. And they have two guys who are kind of projected to go in the top half of the first round right now. And one of them did not play, Jarrett Patterson, center. We're talking about a guy who's 6'4", 310 pounds. He has not missed a practice this week, so he's slated to play after missing last game. But I know, right? Knock on wood. Mm-hmm. But going up against Marshall, what do you want to see from Jarrett Patterson?
You know, is the rust off? Is he just as powerful as he was last season? I think he moved well last season. I want to see, is he ready to step into that full-time role? I know everybody wants to say it's not a big deal. You missed a game. Okay, fine. But that kind of slows your progress through the season. I think they want to hit the ground running. I think there's more that you need to get out of that Notre Dame offense. So can he be the guy that settles everything down? And what does that impact have on the young quarterback that he's going to be snapping to? I think this is one of those deals where everybody's like, hey, centers don't matter. You can get them in the 7th round and you're going to be fine. No, they matter on the outcomes of this entire season.
Well, hold on. You're talking about how much they matter, right? And the Kansas City Chiefs, team you cover, they just drafted a center. Was it 2nd round? Creed Humphrey?
Yep, exactly.
And how much dividends has that paid since kind of investing what is essentially kind of a higher pick for a center?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you look back at the history, what's happened during the Chiefs' run with Andy Reid, it was Mitch Morse before that. It was Rodney Hudson before that. Centers matter. And I think there's a lot of perception out there that college centers don't make that much of an impact. When you're setting up the quarterback that you have to rely on, it can be all-encompassing. I think this actually helps the overall Notre Dame offense, not just in the run-blocking scheme, but what it does for that young QB. And you're absolutely right. You got to have a good one.
Yeah, you typically don't see centers go extremely high. And when they do, whether it's centers or guards, so really interior offensive linemen in general, maybe once a year you see a guy that plays in the interior go in the first round. Kenyon Green, off the top of my head, to the Houston Texans. He's a guard that got drafted first round, kind of middle of the first round as well, kind of where Jarrett Patterson is slated to go. So definitely excited to watch him versus Marshall. Will he be getting a lot of investments come this offseason and draft season? But there's another guy at Notre Dame, and 6'4", 260-pound edge rusher, or Isaiah Foskey. And we're talking about a guy who is coming off of a season where he had 11 sacks in 2021. Now, some people think right now, is he going to play, or is he better suited to play in the 3-4 defense? Is he better suited to play in the 4-3? If he is in the 4-3, they think that he needs to be a little bit stronger. And I've seen some of that on film as well. But a guy who probably is going to be more of a 3-4 type outside linebacker who can definitely rush off of the edge, but while standing up. What are some of your thoughts on him, and what do you want to see versus him versus Marshall?
You know, for me, I'm really comfortable with him as a down lineman. It doesn't bother me. I don't think he has to stand up. I think he comes off the ball decently in both situations. And one of the notes that I made last week in watching him is that not only does he still have the ability to set the edge like we saw last season, he's good in pursuit like we saw last season, but I think his functional strength has improved. That's what I saw last week. And if he can continue that, as well as coming off the ball a little bit quicker, I didn't feel like it was quite as good a first step. There might be some changes going on in his head. Once he settles in, I think you're going to see maybe this week, maybe next week, it's going to start to take off for him. And I'm really excited to see if he can break that sack total that he had last season, because I think he is that good. He should easily be able to work into the first round there, if not the top half of it. Lord knows that somebody the Kansas City Chiefs might be looking at. So I have to kind of keep all these pass rushers in my head because they're always looking for one.
So is there another pass rusher just off the top of your head that where he might be in the same realm as Foskey and you're like, you know what, I want to see a guy who can really get after it? Does it have to be a specific scheme for Kansas City, or, maybe there's a guy that you think will go in the first round that might fit another team very well?
We talked about Jacoby Windman yesterday. I want to see what he does. I'm really interested in O'Shawn Mathis. Neither guy is a fit for the Kansas City Chiefs, in my opinion, because they want guys that are mostly power-based that can take on doubles when they have to, that kind of thing. But both those guys, I'm really interested in seeing. Now, Mathis is really intriguing to me because he's 6'5", 260. And so far, granted, it was Northwestern and then it was North Dakota. But you start off the season pretty well, 8 pressures so far, and I think only 44 pass rush snaps. So that's a decent percentage, and I like the way that it's going. I think he also has to be a guy that gets up to speed. But I'm looking to see what he does this week, and hopefully that will continue to be an upward trend for him.
Yeah, big-time matchups this weekend and some big-time college football games. But what we're going to talk about next, we got prove it or lose it. Some guys that have to kind of, you got to show us. You got to prove it, and there's a game going down in Arkansas between the South Carolina Gamecocks and the Arkansas Razorbacks. A couple quarterbacks that are trying to prove it or lose it. We're going to get into that and more next. But first, we want to talk to you about the good folks over at LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is the perfect spot for you if you are looking to hire, or maybe you even want to get hired. All right. But as you gear up for the fall, you need the right people on your team that help your business fire on all cylinders. In LinkedIn Jobs, they are here to make it easier for you to find the people that you want to talk to faster and for free. Create a job post for free in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach a network and beyond of the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Then add your job and the purple hiring frame in the LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you are hiring, so your network can help you find the right people for you to hire. It's simple tools like this, the screening questions, that make it easy to really focus on the candidates with just the right skills and experience that can help you quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs the number one spot in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. All right, so what we need you to do, go to LinkedIn Jobs. It's going to help you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. All right, and did you know that every week, nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? So you can post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We want to thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen of the day. For your second listen of the day, why not, man? You got Ryan Tracy, Locked On Chiefs. You got myself and Brian Peacock, Locked On 49ers. And plenty of shows across the network in 30 minutes or less every day. Ryan, let's talk about some of these guys, prove it or lose it. And both of us kind of had Spencer Rattler on the mind. Spencer Rattler is going down to Arkansas to face the Arkansas Razorbacks, and Razorbacks coming off of a win. And Spencer Rattler, definitely a polarizing figure. I mean, this is a guy who was projected to go not just first round in the 2021 draft, or 2022 draft, excuse me. Not just first round, first overall. And not only did he not go first overall, he said, you know what, I don't even know if I'm going to get drafted until maybe the third round. And maybe some of these other quarterbacks probably should have did what he did and stayed in school another year, right? The Sam Howells, the Malik Willis, some of these guys where it's like, third round grade on them. But he made the right decision to go back to college. I think he potentially made the right decision to go to South Carolina. But what are we looking for from him? I'll answer that question first. For me, it's really more so how he carries himself, his attitude. I thought that was the one thing about Spencer Rattler that potentially rubbed people the wrong way. And it's hard to follow a guy like that, especially when you are the quarterback. The quarterback has to be the face of the team, right? The face of the program. You got to lead by example. Some of these things have been kind of following Spencer Rattler around, and there's this narrative about who he is. Now, from what I've heard, he's worked extremely hard. So I'm at a training facility up in Minnesota. He's getting after it. He's working on every aspect of his game, and not just on the field, but off the field. But now it has to translate to the field. And going up against Arkansas, that's going to be a big-time game to see how he fares against another quarterback, KJ Jefferson, who we'll get to.
Yeah, I can't argue with you. You got to have the right mentality, or at least you got to have the right mentality for your room. If your team believes in you, at the end of the day, it's about getting W's. And if you can do that, you're going to be all right. For me, it's about the decision-making. Don't push the ball into bad spots. Understand your limitations. I do feel like ever since the whole back and forth happened last season in Oklahoma, like he's pushing every decision and is leading into some, 2 interceptions last week. One was a bad decision, I believe, that's the one that stands out to me. Is like, clean it up.
That's what he's been doing, right? Like, that's what he's been known for. I think even more so than the attitude thing, it's you got to be better with your decision making. They're going to pick him apart during the draft process and look at all the things that they don't like about him physically. He's kind of frailly built, right? He's not the biggest of guys, but he has a lot of talent. But when you talk about the off-field things that have kind of come up, and then now you're talking about on-field bad decision-making, which, I mean, we've seen consistently. We saw that at Oklahoma, which Lincoln Riley ran one of the more QB-friendly offenses that's out there. And even then, he was finding a way to do some weird things to the point to where they benched the kid. And I want him to win. I want him to win. I want him to succeed, but he definitely has to get better with his decision-making. Real quick, I did want to talk about KJ Jefferson real quick, a guy who was extremely efficient last week, completed 18 out of 26 passes. And this is a big-time matchup for him, another SEC team. How is he going to fare? He had 3 touchdowns last game. Is he going to look like the better prospect on field? And I always like to see guys head-to-head. What does it look like? What does it feel like, right, when you watch these 2 guys who are both prospects? We saw it a couple years ago with Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. It was interesting. First time, it was like, okay, I think Trevor Lawrence is the better prospect. Then the next time, the feeling I got, I'm like, oh my goodness, Justin Fields, is he not the number 1 overall pick because he's lighting it up? So I don't know if I'll go as far as to say these guys are battling for the number 1 overall pick, but definitely KJ Jefferson and Spencer Rattler, they both have a lot to prove, and I'm excited to see that. But you had a couple more guys you wanted to touch on.
Yeah, absolutely. And a couple of it surrounds some Pac-12. I want to see Will Rogers. Came out extremely efficient in first ball game, 5 touchdowns, 77% completion percentage, couple of really nice big-time throws that I want to see if he can capitalize. It's going against Arizona. We talked about Cowling, their wide receiver, yesterday, and he has the ability to put points on the board pretty quickly. So I think it puts a little bit more pressure on the Miss State offense. Let's see what he can do. And the other one I think is a matchup you're really going to dig, because I want to see Tanner McKee and how he runs the Stanford offense against your USC Trojans. You think they can come up with these crazy interceptions again?
They had 3 pick sixes in the last game, and I already talked about my guy Raleigh Brown, him getting off as a true freshman. Yeah, big time game for him, especially quarterback. And Stanford kind of has a rich history of quarterbacking just a little bit, right? Especially over the last few years. Started with Andrew Luck, was 2012 he was coming out. Since then, you've had some other quarterbacks who have been really good prospects, including Davis Mills, who ended up being a 3rd-round pick, and now you got another guy here. So interested to see what he can do against USC, but I'm definitely rooting for USC in this one. That won't stop me from really, being able to analyze this young quarterback at Stanford. All right, but that's enough for these guys. Excited to see them this weekend. We got one more thing that we want to talk about with Jim Harbaugh. A couple of things he said in a situation that actually is a little familiar if you're a 49er fan. We're going to talk about that and more coming up next. So Jim Harbaugh,
who?
It's almost like he can't decide which quarterback he wants at Michigan. I think you have a nice little spin on this, but I do want to say this kind of reminded me a little bit 2012. There was a quarterback by the name of Alex Smith, 7-2, was doing well that season. Next thing you know, boom, he gets dinged on the head. He has a concussion. He has to miss a game. A guy named Colin Kaepernick comes in. Kaepernick has a great game against the Chicago Bears. 49ers win. And from then on, it was almost like Jim Harbaugh couldn't decide which quarterback he wanted to play. Yeah. He was asked about it every week in the media. Hey, man, is it going to be Alex Smith? Is it going to be Colin Kaepernick? And he's like, I got 2 quarterbacks. I love them both. And it's almost like history's kind of repeating himself a little bit. And I don't want to say these young guys here are Colin Kaepernick and Alex Smith, but started the quarterback, going to another quarterback, what the hell is going on over there in Ann Arbor?
Well, it's funny because you have that perspective. I totally misplaced the whole thing about Cap and Alex back in the day, because now it's the same situation. You're right. Like, Cade McNamara starts the first game, said it was going to happen. Now J.J. McCarthy's going to start the second game, and then they're going to make a quote-unquote decision. I don't know how that works. McCarthy actually got a few snaps late in the first ball game, and that's fine. Now, the difference for me comes down to the fact that I know that you can take what you want to take about McNamara last year. You can project what you want to project. In the end, he's the senior. He's the prospect here. As we relate everything back on the show to the draft, he is the prospect. McCarthy's not going to be eligible. So, especially given the number of snaps, I think it's just protecting yourself against the situation that you find yourself in the modern college game. And maybe it is a plus for him to actually have two quarterbacks that he feels he can start and get away with. Maybe you could say that about some other schools, but they've gone the opposite direction. Although Texas named yours really, really late in the process to become their starter, I think this is partly due because everybody can transfer so fast due to the portal now. And we saw the whole rumors about Booty out of LSU and not being happy with the way the offense was distributing the ball, even though he did get 6 targets and 2 catches on 6. I think this does go back to, hey, I don't want to lose my backup, so I'm going to give him just enough runway to keep him happy, keep him on the roster, and pepper in some snaps here and there. If the question is going to be, if McCarthy plays well and outplays what you expect from McNamara, this is going to be a Hawaii team he's playing against. What do you do then? Do you continue to go back and forth, or do you name a starter and actually lock it down? That's going to be the big question for me.
Well, the interesting thing is you've talked about 2 quarterbacks, but right now they've played 3 guys. So you got McNamara, and he completed 50% of his passes. He was the lead guy. He had 18 attempts. After him, you had Alex Bowman, who had 6 attempts. He completed 5. And then you had J.J. McCarthy, who had 4 attempts, and he completed all 4. So the starter is the least of the efficient there with much more attempts. And this is really a case of not knowing exactly who your quarterback is. I mean, I don't even know how else to put it. Yeah. This is, if you're Michigan or if you're the fans, how do you handle this type of situation? You should know at this point in the season, right? I mean, again, it's the start of the season, but at this point, you have your spring ball. You have that whole offseason. You have a lot of time to really be able to evaluate and assess this quarterback situation. And right now, maybe it is as simple as just, I'm going to throw these guys a bone because I don't want to lose a guy to the transfer portal. But pretty tough situation.
I don't know. And if it doesn't get resolved quickly, McNamara, a guy who was draft eligible, who's going to be on the radar, may see something happen like Spencer Rattler did last year, where you just fall all the way off of it because you're not in the ballgame.
Yeah, and another thing Jim Harbaugh was in the news for, he said, listen, man, and I love Jim Harbaugh. He's kind of like this quirky old man. He's a little interesting. I have a funny story. My guy, Lavelle Hawkins, Lavelle was a receiver. He actually went to LSU out of high school and then transferred to Cal. He played 3 years at Cal. But he was with the 49ers one offseason, and Lavelle was pretty upset because I'm not getting touches. You guys told me I was going to have an opportunity to make the team, and I'm not getting a real opportunity. I almost feel like a camp body out here. I could have went to Jacksonville if this was the case. I need to be on special teams or something. So Jim Harbaugh says, all right, Hawk, you wanna get on special teams? How about this? I'll give you the first opening kickoff. I'll give you the first kickoff return. And I goes, all right, and I'm going to run it back for a touchdown. Now, he didn't give him the first one, but he gave him like the second one. Mm-hmm. And next thing you know, boop, catches it, takes it to the house. So, but it was funny just the interaction between Jim Harbaugh and him and how Harbaugh kind of presented himself in that entire situation. And everyone that I've spoken to who has either played for him or been around him talks about like this is a kind of a quirky guy. And he's asked about kind of the revenue of what they're getting, financially with these organizations or institutions. And he's like, yeah, man, I think you should split this revenue with the players. There's enough money to go around for everybody. The college is making like $7 billion a year. Why not share some of this with some of these guys? So they're already getting NIL money, but maybe there's enough to go around for some of the guys who aren't fortunate enough or don't have the big enough name to get an NIL deal.
ADs and chancellors around the country are losing their minds right now. Throwing
Right.
stuff
Like,
at him.
Jim Harbaugh, shut up.
Pick a quarterback.
Right. Pick a quarterback, worrying about the money that's coming into these players, all right? But you know what? We're going to shut up too, and that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On the NFL Draft. We want to thank you for making us your first listen every day. Now, for your second listen, go check out the Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022, an 8-episode extravaganza to get you ready for this NFL season. The local team experts of the Locked On Podcast Network, plus a betting angle from Lee Sterling of Locked On Bets, all combining into one ultimate NFL preview. Search for Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022 on your Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. But it's going to do it. We'll catch y'all Monday after these games and kind of recap what we see. Until then, we're out. Peace.